Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of American Grit with myself, Tim Jensen. We've got a great program for you today. And we have the one and only. You've seen him all over the social medias. He's an active duty Marine. He's got a big following. He's quite funny, and he's got great content. Let me introduce Kagan Dunlap to the show, my friends. Welcome to the show, Kagan. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I appreciate it, Tim. Thanks for that, man. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, a little bit about your background for those that may not know who you are. I know it's got to be a very small crowd.
Yeah.
But you're a United States Marine Corps officer, right? Went to UNC Chapel Hill. Did you grow up in the great state of North Carolina?
I lived in North Carolina from like 1998 until 2014 when I first enlisted, and then I ended up, when I got selected for that EDO program I went to college in North Carolina because I was still a state resident, so it was cheaper to do that, and plus I had family nearby, so I was able to like visit them and stuff like that. So.
I grew up in Garner.
Garner, okay.
Garner,
yeah, I know where Garner is.
Went to high school there. Yeah,
oh man,
it's a magnet school now.
A magnet school.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that means, but it's
I don't know. What do they sell magnets there now, or maybe it's science? I don't know.
So yeah, you got a background in fitness. You have an incredible social media channel, over 650,000 subscribers on your YouTube. So how did you get into it all, man?
Man, it's been, I've told this story a couple times on a few different podcasts, but the big thing that got me started with the whole social media stuff was really, there was I would say like a catalyst moment. And that catalyst moment for me to really get me to push on this was the Uvalde, Texas shooting.
Yeah.
And for everybody that's already heard me say this story or tell the story, I apologize in advance because I've told it a million times. But it's basically, I was scrolling on Facebook one day in the spring of 2022, right after this thing had happened, and I saw a post of a Marine in his dress blue Deltas standing on the parade deck at Parris Island with both of his parents. And it turned out that the post was linked to a GoFundMe, and basically the mother in the post was the mother of that U.S. Marine. She was one of the teachers at Uvalde that was killed. And the father, standing right next to them, actually passed away in the same week from, I believe, heart failure or something to that degree. So this kid who was a Marine, he was a reservist. He wasn't active duty, but he was going to college in Texas at the time. And basically, he just lost both of his parents in the same week as a college student. So he's young, brain's still not even fully developed yet, and you just lost both your parents. Like, better off than some situations, of course, but that's rough. Like, you lost both your parents at the same time within 1 week. And there was a GoFundMe to help the family cover for funeral costs and to, just help the family out financially because they just lost the patriarch, right? And so I saw this and was like, okay, let's share this with everybody that I know. And I sent it to like 100 people, like everybody from like somebody that's got 1,000 followers to pages that had, 150,000 or something like that. And I just asked everybody to share it. I gave them an explanation of like what it was about, what was happening. Some people were down to help, some people didn't. But what ended up happening specifically, it ended up getting to this guy I know who runs the Mostly Peaceful Memes page. I don't know if you know who that is. He's friends with a lot of really big meme pages and really big pages who have like a couple million followers at the time. And he sent them to them, and they reposted it. And I watched the money go up like multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in one day.
That's great.
From that, just from sending it to like 100 people and explaining what was going on. And that was like the defining moment for me, where it's like, okay, I need to figure out a way where I can build my own social media accounts and followings up to a point where I don't need to rely on other people to push the word out for some things that are important or to raise awareness about things that affect us or things that are important to our community. So it's like, I have to go as hard as I can for as long as I can to build this stuff up. Because ultimately, like, the thing that gives me the greatest sense of gratification is helping people and doing good things for people that are positive for them, or having a positive impact on people. Even if that's just like, hey, they learned something that day, or I taught them something, or oh, I didn't know that was going on, or maybe it brought a couple people together. Like sometimes there's been situations I shared something and there's a couple people in the comments that are like, hey, I was on that ship during that time. Oh, no kidding, so was I. Let's go get dinner sometime. You create these connections and like this, and it just happens organically. And don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of polarizing stuff out there. There's a lot of it that I happen to talk about sometimes because like the military and geopolitics and Department of Defense, and there's a lot of stuff going on with that. Like sometimes it's like controversial occasionally. But I would say the majority of the time, like it's helping strengthen bonds with people. It's helping raise awareness about things that are important to the community. And ultimately the long-term, focus for me is being able to, conduct works of philanthropy with different organizations, whether they be my own or some other organization, just because, actually being able to have a tangible impact on people, whether it's raising money for something like that's because you can have a big impact doing like fundraisers for people, maybe not through certain social channels, but like if you're doing it independently. So that's kind of the big reason that I got into it initially. And as you scale and as you try to build this thing so that you can do more for people, because like the bigger you are, like you look at, a large company, right? A large company that took a long time to build, they had to build up to a certain place, but now they can give away thousands of dollars, every so often to like help whatever organizations or thing, So just got to get to that point, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I definitely want to get into a lot of the charitable things that you do. But there's something that you had mentioned, and I hear this a lot. Like people like, Tim, like how do I break through? How do I get into like the social media and become an influencer, this, that, and the other, right? I'm sure people always come up to you like, how did you do it, right? How did you break the code? But it's honestly, it comes, you said it, right? And you look back at pretty much, a lot of influencers in the space is, or not this space, just in space, the social media in general. The ones that build great audiences, come in with much like you did with the Uvalde story, right? There was something that got you up off of your chair and you're like, I have to do something. You just happened to send out something to 100 people that took off and, got you the opportunity to, have a conversation, bring people, educate people on it, bring them to an action, and then, raise a lot of money and do some good with that. But honestly, that there are so many of those stories, right? That when people ask that question, it's like, go find something that you're passionate about. Like, when people are out there and you could see like the Talk to a Girl and all that stuff that are forcing their way into notoriety, right? It just comes off as a grift. It comes off inauthentic. And the next thing you know, you're selling shit coins for $50 million.
Dude, that whole situation was wild. I watched that unfold too.
Yeah, I mean, we are living in probably one of the coolest times in human history. That you can watch some of this stuff on the privacy of your own device, and people just put so much information out in the world. It's entertaining.
Well, the only way to combat this, like, because like you said, there's such a massive influx, a floodwater of information. The only way that you can combat the bad information, or combat all this crazy grift stuff, or like, just people that are just out there being negative all the time or nasty to each other. The only way you can combat that is with good stuff. Like putting out good stuff.
That's it. Create a platform that expresses positivity, right? That gives people some, because what people are looking for when they're on their devices is like-minded individuals that share common thought and common values, and escaping from their current reality, right? Just I've got 10 minutes between now and my next meeting. I'm gonna scroll through my social media, see what's going on, right? That's what people do, right? And if you are connecting to them in those moments the right way, which you do fantastically, right?
I appreciate that.
It goes off very well, and people like gravitate to it because you're providing something that people are looking for in those moments that they have for themselves.
Don't get me wrong, I have a lot of improving I could always do on everything, especially in the positivity aspect. Some of the stuff I talk about is just like inherently negative because it's like war, stuff like that, But I do think having a positive message, like at least trying to put some other positive stuff out there, I think would be beneficial, and I could do a better job of that. So I'm glad you brought that up. There's always room for improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never a finished product.
No,
it's always in motion. And that's one of the things I've really, I started following you a long time ago, specifically for your give backs and the things that you were doing in the community to raise other people's situations, right? That often get mixed into a world of other messages and never get elevated to the right ways. I've watched what you do with 107, which is a great group out there doing incredible things for the toxic exposures within our community, cancers. I know you've raised a bunch of money for that group and the things that are going on there. With all of the work of being in those environments, helping people in their moments of need, and listening to those stories, there has to be an outlet, right? You have to, you take those stories in.
Oh, yeah.
The stories have to come out, or they're just going to build.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is like, and just to clarify, like I've done work with a few different organizations. There's been like 107, Operation Allies Refuge Foundation's another really good one. I've done work with Veteran Success Resource Group is another one ran by my friend Scott over there in Virginia. There's a lot of great organizations. And granted, a lot of the stuff, like you said, it does revolve around like a horrible thing that happened. And if you allow yourself to like soak all this stuff in like a sponge and like all the emotions that are attached to it, and you don't find a way for release, like, yeah, I could see it would be something that could eventually start causing you harm almost. Like if you drink too much poison, it's going to hurt you, or if you drink too much alcohol or something, it's going to hurt you. Right. I think I try to do a good job of not holding on to negative emotions or the negative things that cause this to happen. And I try to focus more on what am I doing right now to help with this situation to make it better for somebody. And I stay hyper fixated on that, because then it's like, okay, I don't have any control over the fact that this event, if it's involving a specific event, I don't have any control over whether or not this event is occurring. It happened. It is what it is. It's done. That's life sometimes. What am I doing right now to try and make some sort of a positive impact on the people that this situation has affected? And that's the most gratifying piece of it. And it makes me feel good doing good things for other people, and I would encourage other people to do the same. It doesn't make me feel good to talk bad about other folks. It doesn't make me feel good bringing people down. It doesn't make me feel good bad mouthing other people, even if they don't like me and they bad mouth me.
Right.
It doesn't make me feel good. What makes me feel good is like, what am I doing to like impact somebody in a positive way today, whether it be like the Hurricane Helene situation, which we were able to go up there. I think I've in total raised $80,000 over the past couple months, not the past couple months, but let me see, because it hit September 27th. So throughout October, in 1 month, basically. Yeah. So in 1 month, I raised, I think, $20,000 on Instagram, $20,000 on a GoFundMe. That all went to a group called Mountain Projects in Waynesville, North Carolina. And then I raised another $5K off the rip real quick from my Venmo and Cash App, which I went to Lowe's with and bought 6 generators, 9 propane heaters, a bunch of propane, a bunch of other stuff that I could bring up with them. And we dropped in by helicopter and dropped off supplies at all these different Austrian locations about 2 weeks after the storm. And so that was awesome. Like, met a ton of really cool people, made some really good connections, got phone numbers from people in case I came back that I could reconnect with. And then also helped try to connect people in the logistics chain throughout all the different places. So that was awesome, bringing people together in that way. And then we did another fundraiser after that, which resulted in raising another $35K, which we bought tents with. And also we bought tents, these like white duck outdoors tents that you can basically put a wood burning stove in.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's like the old Civil War.
Right. Yeah, like the ones you see in the Western movies and stuff
yeah.
like that. Yeah. So we had how many did we? I think it was 26. We had 26, and we brought them up to a bunch of different places. I gave a few away to the Save Our Allies group up there so that they could distribute them. I gave 16 of them to a guy that works for the volunteer fire department in a place called Double Island up near Green Mountain.
Yeah.
That was the big drop because they had about 50 Amish people coming down to build tiny homes for people.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is going to impact a lot more people, and they'll have an actual hard enclosure. So we set 16 of them up there so the Amish could stay throughout the wintertime, rotate in and out so that they could continue building homes for people. So that was a really impactful thing. I ended up having about $9,000 saved or left over after we had purchased those tents, and I got linked up. Funny story, I met a doctor who was working at the Avery County Airport at the time we had landed there, dropped some supplies, and they had a makeshift aid station at the Avery County Airport for the folks that were up in the hollers that they couldn't get to the hospitals because they were overwhelmed. And this doctor I interviewed in my first trip up there, I met her. She reached out to me when I was back up there and was like, hey, I got a guy who is, he cooks for these elementary school students, him and his wife. And that whole elementary school, it's a charter school, got ruined by the flood, totally destroyed. So now all those elementary school students are going to the charter school where all the high school students go. But these guys are still trying to cook for them. They still need to make food for them. And they had like a little food truck put together to do that. But they needed all kinds of stuff. They needed like a dishwasher. They needed a gas oven. They needed all this stuff and tables and just ways to like facilitate food service for over 200 kids.
Yeah.
And so I had $9,000 left over when I got up there. I was like, I'm going to find a way to spend this up here that's going to help people. I don't care what it is. And so she linked me up with him. I'm like, cool, that's where we're going. That's where it's going. And we bought their whole Amazon wish list right there on the spot at the school. And we're still working on Amazon, jacked some stuff up, and they're missing a generator still, but everything else has been delivered. And just got to work on getting that last generator to them. But now they're able to, because they have that stuff, it's going to facilitate and enable them to feed all these children from this elementary school. And like that stuff, that's so huge. That's affecting potentially hundreds of families, and that's not something that I did. It's not me. There was tons of people. I was the conduit who could get the message out to other people who actually have money to donate for it. And then I can go around and make sure that, and I show transparency. I'm like, hey, this is the cost. This is what we spent on everything. Here's all the invoices. And then that way they can be confident that, hey, this guy's legit. Yeah. This guy's real. He's going to be transparent. He's going to show us that, like, hey, our money is being spent on the things that we want it to be spent on. And then there's that transparency and that trust, and building that trust is important too, because there's also a lot of folks out there that are just nasty people that have been trying to con folks and scam people out of this tragedy, which is that blows my mind. I can't even like, there's choice words that we all would have for that. Obviously we wouldn't say them on air, but
it's evil. It's a level of evilness that is occurring there. And, I don't want to go too far into all that, because that's a deep hole.
That's a deep hole, yeah. But anyway, bottom line is, like, the point is I try to stay focused on the good stuff. Yeah. Try to stay focused on the positive stuff. I try not to soak myself in the negative things that happen, and I try to just focus on what am I doing right now to help somebody else every day. Whether it be just teaching somebody something or like facilitating raising money for something. Yeah,
and it's very hard, like, to stay positive all the time. Right?
It is,
especially when you're in a position like yourself where people are consuming that content, right? You have a expectation at this point of this is the style of the things I'm going to bring forward, and the topics of conversation. So it's it's hard. It's hard, right? To constantly come up with new content and different things, different conversations, and then navigate all the other things, right? So life. Oh my God, right? You're still an active duty officer in the United States Marine Corps, right? Yeah. And you're putting in leave requests to go up to the hills of North Carolina.
I'm on leave right now.
Right, you're on leave right now. I think that's that's if you roll back time, right? I don't necessarily think that the circumstances were different. If you go back 20 years of the warfighter, right, and people were still doing the same things that we are doing today, but I think the amplification is much larger now because of the way that we can like globally communicate or locally communicate is amplified in ways that we've never experienced before, right? We had the telephone, great, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But it's not like I can send a direct message now in seconds and on multiple platforms across many different ways, and get 100,000 people to do something immediately, right? That is the power of the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
Right? And
from any country in the world.
From any country
you
in
be
the
in
world.
Syria right now shooting messages out to people.
Yeah.
Off of Starlink.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, it was another feat of, just, great humans coming together. I went up there, I think it was I think I got there a week before ahead of you.
Yeah, I think you were able to get up there a little sooner than I could. But.
And, but to see how, the people that were coming together, I went to several different food sorting facilities, right, and was helping out there. And but to your point, like I think what these circumstances bring are people together that have the means, right, and that's the beauty of this is like when Americans rally together and we put our heads together. There's nothing that an American can't achieve, right? Because we have the means and we have the gumption. And the will, right? Beyond probably any other culture on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's what I have seen in Helene. I've seen that at Hurricane Harvey. I spent 3 months in a town rebuilding that town. God, that was devastation. I have not seen in quite some time, right?
Yeah.
But time and time again, you see these acts of kindness and people coming together and rallying for their neighbor, and that's such an incredible moment to be a part of. To bring joy to other people that are in a moment of their their worst moments. Right?
Yeah.
I've seen some incredible families that lost everything.
Yeah,
up there in the hills, and I spent a large portion of my life in North Carolina, and growing up there, and I know what that whole circumstance is like. I remember when Asheville didn't only have one stoplight in that town, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, wow, so it was hurtful to see what happened there, and it's hurtful to see what's still going on there. But
you still can't drink the water up there.
Can't drink the water. I'm reading news articles that there are radiation problems in the soil. That they're reading all sorts of high radiation from the washout that happened in the up there in the nuclear storage facility. There's a lot of bad things that are coming out of that, and nobody's talking about it. Right?
Yeah. I don't know much about the radiation piece. I will say there's a lot of information coming from all over the place, and it's very hard to discern
what's true
from what's just rumor. Because, like, for example, I went to Marshall, right? I was in Marshall about 13, 14 days after the hurricane, and people were talking about how, hey, be careful about Marshall. The mud there is toxic and it'll melt your boots right off your feet. Exactly right.
What?
Yeah, I was like,
was this toxic?
Let me check this out. Right. I went up there and I was walking around fine. My shoes I was walking in some of the mud. It was cleared out a lot when I got up there, but it wasn't melting anyone's shoes. Right. They did have cleaning stations to clean off your boots because there were probably pollutants in it, and they wanted to make sure that people weren't getting sick.
Yeah.
It wasn't melting anybody's boots, but you can see like how certain things can maybe get like warped because it's like, oh, it makes a story, or it's like a good headline or something like that. But at the end of the day, like there's still a lot of work to be done. And the only way it's going to get out there is from people talking about it. So and this is how it works. Like the good information will find its way to the surface because enough people be like, wait, that sounds like kind of bullshit. Like, let's look at this and find out what's actually going on. Because I mean, I've like, part of it is like the people that are trying to scam people. Like, people found out that those people were scammers and they got caught and either arrested or exposed for it, and then it stopped happening, and then move on to the next thing. But it's. I think at the end of the day, like they're going to need a lot of support up there, probably for at least a decade or two, rebuilding stuff, especially in these smaller towns like Barnardsville. Marshall's got a lot of work to do still. Burnsville, Spruce Pine, a lot of the places that were north of Asheville got wrecked. Chimney Rock, obviously, Bat Cave. I landed in a helicopter in this parking lot in Chimney Rock and I interviewed the mayor, and I talked to the volunteer firefighters. I've talked to some business owners out there, and I mean it was crazy, just crazy, like how much was destroyed, how much it's gonna take to fix this stuff, like millions of dollars to repair these things. But it's like, that's where my heart is. I want to retire up in the Appalachian Mountains and just like, have a big piece of land out there. I mean, if I was filthy rich, I'd buy a giant piece of land up there and then build a retreat center for vets on it. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
And I got a buddy that's trying to work on doing some stuff like that too right now. But man, it's just like there's something about the mountains of North Carolina, the Smoky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, that's just like, I feel more at home there than anywhere else I've ever been on planet Earth. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I don't know if
there's
it's
some spiritual shit there, man.
There's some spiritual shit there, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
I've lived, dude, I've been up in those hills a lot over my life. All the way up into Roanoke on the Blue Ridge. Yeah. Like there is some majestic things up there that is just really, really just cool. And you ever been in the Blue Ridge mountains or the Smoky Mountains and seeing the phenomenon of the Smokies and why it gets its name? It's phenomenal. Like, man, that is some old stuff there.
Yeah, I mean those mountains have been there for longer than the Rockies apparently, because they're just, I mean that's why they're so settled down. But man, I just like, every day I wake up and I envision walking out of my back porch, like looking over the mountains with the smoke settling on the mountains and drinking some coffee out there, Like,
it reminds me of that meme that was going around for a while. Like, everybody's talking like, Rome. I'm like, fuck, what does everybody talk about Rome? There's two things I worry about. It's my last stand and like my frontier.
Yeah, exactly. My frontier, yeah. And there still is an American frontier out there. I mean, there's a lot of other states too that have good frontier. You got, Colorado, not Colorado, but well, you do have some Colorado, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, all these, there's a lot of frontiers still, man. Wyoming.
Yeah, it's like we live in the greatest diversity of the country, and probably anywhere on the planet. Yeah, right. You hear Europeans talk like, the American experience, like it's so interesting. Like they live in these 50 states. That's why they don't have to go like on holiday outside of the United States, because every state is a new adventure.
It's so beautiful, man. And you just got to get you a fireplace and mount a Winchester lever action on the side of it. You know what I mean?
That's it. That's it, man. Like I think the story of what Hurricane Helene is going to be, at least in my perspective or opinion, is really going to be all of those Special Forces veterans that really came to action. Yeah. And were the first ones climbing up those hills, pulling people out of the rubble, the washed out areas, and providing triage where needed. Yeah. Like, that's going to be the story, right? Yeah. And that's, again, why I think that our community is so important, is that in every circumstance in this country's history, there has been veterans leading the way in a moment of when we are needed most. Yeah. And, that goes to say that our service is never done when we take the uniform off, because we're just a little bit different from everybody else. And we're always going to find ourselves in those situations, be it 10 years after military service or 50 years after military service.
Yeah. Well, people that joined the military because they wanted to serve a higher purpose or because they felt compelled to do something. Yeah. Those people are also the people that when they get out of the military, they see something and they will feel compelled to do something again.
Yeah. What made you join?
I would say, well, I mean, I definitely felt compelled. I felt compelled that I owed something to the greatest country in the history of the universe to do something bigger than myself, serve a higher purpose for something bigger than myself. And, I had a lot of friends that were in the military. I mean, I grew up in a military town for a little bit of time. I mean, I spent 4 years in Fayetteville. I think that's probably my first experience in the military. And I had a lot of friends in the Army. A lot of their family was in the Army. I mean, I was in high school from 2001 until 2005. And in 2002, to like 2000. I mean, really till from 2002 to 2005 was when I was in Fayetteville, and I was in high school in Fayetteville at Terry Sanford High School, and that was like during the peak of like, you know, the surge, right? Like
kicking doors when you're a junior.
People, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like when people, like people's parents of like people I was in high school with, their parents were in Fallujah during that,
Right.
and that's crazy to think about. Like people were getting Red Cross messages in my high school, you know, while we're in high school. I'm a junior in 2003 or 2004, you know, very different experience, but that was like my first exposure. And then I also just like, I made a lot of friends that were military cats, and, you know, I wanted to do something that was hard, and I wanted to feel fulfilled, and I wanted to get in good shape. I wanted to get paid to be in good shape. Like, how cool is that? You get paid to be in good shape and you get free healthcare. Like there's a lot of reasons for it, but definitely the feeling compelled to do something that's greater than myself, that benefits other people, and that service aspect, because that's gratifying to me. Again, like I think those are the biggest reasons for me.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Yeah. And, you know, I think, you know, this, you could ask 100 veterans, right? And 98 of them will probably say the same thing, right? In the sense of like wanting to do something more and contributing to the greatness of this country.
Yeah.
You know, and it just, you know, I think the veteran community, you know, it goes without saying. Again, we are always there in the front of everything.
You know, what's funny? The small story. My buddy Johnson, he was a mortarman, and one of the smartest dudes I've ever met in my life. Dude was brilliant. He was part of the last peer group from 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines who went to Marja, who actually did an Afghan pump. Because like after them, the peer group that showed up after him, we stopped going to Afghan after that. So like his peer group was the last peer group to go to Afghan from 3rd Marines. And he said, you know, he got asked this by like a sergeant major or something, and it pissed him off because he answered. And honestly, he's like, honestly, I joined the Marine Corps because I lost the coin toss.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, that's why he joined. He's like, you know, I was like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I can do that job. Like, yeah, I could do that job. Because he worked on like he worked on oil rig, I think, or
like a roughneck or something.
Oh yeah, he was working. He did some hard work before he joined, and then he joined, and now he's like finishing up his engineering degree. Dude's like Rain Man, straight up. But I feel like I needed to share that at least. So. This is gonna be one season 2.
No,
that
sure.
joined for something else.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's I've met a few of those.
Sure. I mean, everybody's got at least one buddy they met that joined for some weird reason. I'm sure, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Now, you know, other areas that you spend a lot of time, you know, you spend a lot of time on mental health, right? Which is a big part of
I've tried to, yeah.
some of the challenges that are happening within the community, both active duty and the veteran side.
Yeah.
You know, where you know, share. I'd love to hear what your perspective is on the current, you know, way that the Marine Corps. Let's just stay on the Marine Corps side.
Yeah.
How does the Marine Corps, in its current garrison state, like how are they viewing mental health amongst the active duty? Is it a high priority, or is it a like low priority?
I would say it's still a pretty high priority. Yeah. Just from what I've seen. I mean, they still have like this, you know, the suicide prevention program, and they have every unit has an appointed person to be the, you know, suicide prevention coordinator for that unit. So they have a person who's billet. That's their secondary billet to manage that and maintain that. There is a lot of people understand now, like because of the fact that the rate of self-harm or attempts and things like that is still staggeringly high for the military, especially the Marine Corps. And because of the fact that the majority of people in the Marine Corps now don't have combat experience. Yeah. Not directly. I mean, a lot of people have, you know, been trained, right? But most of the people that have actually experienced combat now are like gunnies and above, maybe some staff sergeants and, you know, some captains and above. But like most lieutenants, most captains don't have combat experience. Most enlisted folks up to staff sergeant probably don't have combat experience, unless they were, you know, part of the evacuation, right? But because of that, like there's not as much people with combat experience. So a lot of the correlations between like combat related PTSD and suicide rates is not the same as it used to be. Now it's like you've got a large majority of folks who haven't ever deployed anywhere.
Yeah.
And the rate is still staggeringly high. Now, why is that? Well, you know, there's a lot of things that go into that. Like taking care of mental health is something that we will always have to. Here's the thing. My buddy's like, good buddy of mine said, you're never going to reduce that number to 0. You're never going to do it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't keep trying.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
You should never stop trying with that. Because and we're finding new different ways to do stuff. Like, okay, we're gonna fix the barracks. We're gonna work on making sure that the barracks are livable and there's not black mold in them and people aren't depressed to go back to their room at night. Giving people ample opportunity to work out during the day, because exercise has been proven to have a positive impact on mental health and endorphins, and, you know, reduce the likelihood that people are going to have.
That's outside of organized PT, right?
Yeah, outside of organized PT. Like, hey, you know, here's a 2-hour chow. Go to the gym, go eat chow, come back. You know what I mean? Like, people are getting afforded more opportunities to do that kind of stuff. There's, you know, obviously, like, there's a lot of different programs there's different people like the Marine Corps family life counselors that are out there that you can speak to. You can obviously always talk to chaps, and chaps can't tell anybody what you're telling them. And then there's like Oscar trainers, and there's like, you know, the suicide prevention coordinators, and there's just like a lot more resources. But the one thing I've noticed is people are always afraid of being judged, and they don't want to be seen as asking for help, maybe because they feel like they're going to appear weak. There's always that thought. And if that's the case, then there's other things you can do on your own. And like, there's resources, you just have to tap into it, you know? I don't know what the answer is as to why we're having this. I think maybe part of it has to do with the fact that social media, people being terminally online and comparing themselves to other people all the time. Is a lot of this stuff touchy-feely, and like, you know, maybe it's like, okay, what does that have to do with warfighting? Well, people, I think, in this day and age, and it's not always the case, but I think a lot of the time people there's a certain type of person that came from like the 1980s, right? Like our parents in that generation let us outside, and we didn't have cell phones. Like, they're like, go play and then come back at this time for dinner, and they just let us run loose out in the streets. You know what I mean? And like, we kind of like learned to take care of ourselves, and you had to become resourceful and have some street smarts. I think that just in this day and age, people are a little more protective of their kids as they're growing.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
You know, and like they're not as exposed to dangers and these things, and like maybe they have a harder time adapting to when they go off to live on their own, you know. And
yeah,
and
I've seen that myself. Like, I've got a 20-year-old son, right?
Yeah.
A great example. You know, he's in the Navy right now. The way that I parented him was very much in the way that my parents parented me.
Yeah.
You know, I was a latchkey kid, and, you know, I kind of had free reign to do whatever the hell I wanted, and
same.
yada, yada, yada. And, you know, I felt that there was something that I gained from that in my youth. So
Sure.
I played around with that with my oldest son. I've got a 7-year-old son, and that mentality is much different. Here I am today, 20 years later, with a different kid, and I've got a daughter in between. But, you know, I think the dynamics of society have changed over 20 years to where now I am parenting different because of the dangers that are lurking around every corner. You know, hey, my kid might get taken, or this, that, and the other. Like, there is some weird stuff going on that you can't let your kid run around the neighborhood, right? I remember in Chicago, right before I was leaving there, it was a murder on my block. One 16-year-old was kidnapped. There was a drug dealing operation right across the street from me that was collaborating with the local police department. It was out of control.
Yeah.
You can't raise a family in that environment.
No.
Right. And how do you even get to set your children up for success when, they're looking over their shoulder because they're, in these environments. So it's challenging, right?
Yeah.
Of like how do we manage society? How do we grow along with it? And how are we being better examples for the generation behind us, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something I spent a lot of time thinking on. And like, I never would have thought I would. If you would ask Tim Jensen, 25-year-old Tim Jensen, like when you're 40, you think you're going to care what what you're leaving behind? I was absolutely not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny how much you change as you get older, man. In some ways you get softer. Not softer as in like you let people push you around more, but softer as in like you become. At least for me, I've become more empathetic as I've gotten older.
Oh yeah, sure. I think I react less.
Yeah.
I'm more responding in my nature. I listen more, and I'm not quick to crack my mouth off. And I've lost a couple teeth because of that. There's some hard learnings.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think that's a good point too, because like I talk a lot. Part of what I do is talk all the time, but I think that what you said there is a very important piece too, is being able to listen and knowing when it's time to listen,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's I think, as you get older, you get more wise, right? And the wisdom really starts to come through. For those that are, at least enlightened enough to recognize it.
Yeah.
Through the Grunt South Foundation, we spend a lot of time in this area, right? There's a lot of things that are driving the suicide numbers in our society, right? You've got socioeconomic issues, you've got mental health issues, you've got abuse issues, and I look at the numbers, right? So there's a bunch of numbers that get thrown around, and will we ever know what the true number is? I don't know, but Brown University said 30,177 veterans have died over the last 20 years. Then you get the VA saying, well, it's 120,000, right? And then you get the harmful, non-violent death reporting that's coming out of some of these areas that say the suicide numbers in the veteran community is actually like 156,000 people, right? And then you start looking at the numbers within that, right? And it is my belief that while suicide is a big problem within the cohort of our generation, I think the larger numbers are still happening with that Vietnam era, and we are going to start seeing the real numbers of this starting affecting our community in about 5 to 7 years, when those initial guys and gals that went into Iraq and Afghanistan start retiring fully out of the economy, right? Not to say they're retiring out of the military, they're just fully out, right? And they have nothing to do, and they're going to sit on their hands and enjoy that retirement life. But as we know, when idle hands are the devil's playgrounds.
Oh yeah.
And that's where you start dwelling and ruminating on things you've done over your life, and there's not a lot that we have to be proud about when it comes to Afghanistan and Iraq. And I think there's going to be some challenges with our community that when those moments start coming, and we don't get our community right now or over the next couple of years, that we're going to have a bigger problem on our hands. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're spot on. Like, I think the key, and I thought of it immediately, is like, okay, if you're idle hands of the devil's playthings or whatever it is, like, you get, like, especially for these cats, when they start retiring, getting out of the military, the first thing you need to do is get plugged in, get active, get engaged with your community, find a home, find people to work with, go to your local VFW, find a local veteran charity organization, find a local, some sort of local veteran group that happens to be in your town, get together with people, cook dinners, go hunting together, get locked in with your community, because that's what human beings need. We are social creatures. And when we become isolated, especially once we get out of the military, when people are isolated and they're just stuck there with their own thoughts, and they're just like maybe taking in their pension and their VA benefits, but they're by themselves, you go from being in this like, hey, I've got this big community, I've got my platoon, I've got my section, my company, whatever. I see all these people at work every day, like we're PTing together, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're going across the globe. and then all of a sudden you're back home and you're, maybe with your spouse and your kids, or maybe your kids have graduated and left the house already. What are you going to do then? It's like, well, you got to get involved in your community, volunteer, get out there, do something to help people, do something for somebody else. Like, that's the key, because like when you get out there and you get involved with people and you're working with other people to help people, you don't have time to sit there and stew on your own thoughts and just like think about yourself, or think about, and it's okay to like think about yourself in the sense that, like, if you want to start a business and you want to, like, start making some money outside of this, or make a product or provide a service, like, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But getting engaged with your community in some way is so hyper important for the veteran and military community, just because that's what kind of like binds us together, is the community. And don't get me wrong, like you and I have had this conversation before, like the veteran community and the active duty community is very similar. Like, nobody loves the active duty and military and like veteran community more than that same community, but nobody also hates on their own community more than active duty and vets. And you see that, and that's cool. Stay away from those people. If you run into somebody that's that negative person, or that's just bringing people down, or just talking crap about everybody in their own community all the time, stay away from that person and find people that are doing something positive. Like, that doesn't mean that people can't be held accountable for stuff. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to be doing it. That's not what I want to do. I don't get any like satisfaction or gratification from that. I'm going to continue to engage in a positive, meaningful way that, helps people or raises awareness about stuff. And I encourage other people to do the same. Just because when you do that stuff, you'll never feel alone. You won't spend as much time inside of your own head, which is a dangerous place to spend too much time.
That's depression.
That's too much. You can't spend all that time up there. It's not good for you. You're not getting any good information if all you're talking to is yourself. So it's good to get out there, talk to other people, engage with other people. Volunteer. Like the Reverent Warriors do a great thing. They get people together and they go on hikes. And all over the country. That's great. You're getting people together. They're talking with each other. Maybe they're setting up other events, things like that. Range days, going shooting guns with each other. Great. That's awesome. Food drives, whatever. Like, that's cool. Galas, events, SHOT Show, whatever it is. There's so many things in the community that you can do to get locked in with each other and engage.
The timeline that I normally see of a veteran that gets out is, the first 4 years you don't want to have anything to do with it. Like, you've just separated. You're good. I'm going to start my new life, right?
Yeah.
But at 5th year, you're like, oh man, I'm starting to miss it. The civilian life is not what I thought it was going to be. It's a lot harder. A lot of cutthroat happening going on out here, and now I start reconnecting with my community. Right. By the 10th year, now I have all the gear. Right.
I've got all the gear in my garage, and I'm filming YouTube videos.
That's right. And then by year 15, you're in the fucking American Legion, right?
Yeah.
And you're back in it to some way or shape or form. And maybe by year 20, right, you are representing the veteran community. I see that timeline happens so much, right? But if we were to flip that on its back and encourage people to immediately, when the minute your boots hit the ground in your hometown USA and you start reconnecting with people in your local community, like, I've never heard it put that way before, and I think that is the right answer. Right?
Yeah.
Is make that quick transition and get connected to a network in your new home of record.
Yeah.
Right. And start building those relationships and start getting involved, working at a soup kitchen or, whatever it may be. Like, there's so many different things you can do.
Yeah. Even if you're like, hey, I'm going to go back to college. Cool. That's fine. You can go to college. There's veteran organizations at universities.
Yeah.
Lots of them. You want to go get a job somewhere, or you want to start a business? Cool. Just find a way, like, spend at least a little bit of time getting keyed back in, locked in with your community.
Yeah, because the contrary to all that is isolationism.
Yep.
And then that's a fast road to pills and drugs and alcohol and all sorts of just negative behavior that is not going to be good for you, for your loved ones, and any plans that you have in the future.
Yeah, and even if you don't get into that stuff, it's a dark place to be stuck inside your own head without anyone to talk to you about it.
Certainly.
And the camaraderie that you have in the military is hard to replicate with your civilian friends.
Yeah.
It just is, because you don't have the same shared experiences, shared hardship, shared stories.
Yeah.
You know, like you can get guys, veterans from different wars, completely different wars. They're going to have something to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to have something one another can identify with, or an experience that one had that's like, oh yeah, we did something similar back when we were in Kosovo or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think everybody can, relate to a good story of stirring shit somewhere.
yes, 100%, man. That's it.
But I want to shift gears a little bit. You spend a lot of time talking about world events. And, I think you do a really, really great job of, providing an opinion that maybe is a take that many other people haven't heard before, right? And it's from a position of an educated military man that sees the world through a perspective of national security and defense and just good Americanism. There's a lot going on in the world today, man. Before we started this podcast, I was just reading that this little drone situation that's happening in New Jersey is they're trying to pin it on the Iranians. Come on,
it's like
so. We'll jump back to that one, but where I think I want to start is, I'd love to hear your opinions. Right, we got a new administration coming in, right, and with that is some new leadership that comes at the cabinet levels that is going to, presumably change the doctrine of the way that we are operating the United States military, right? We've been largely operating under Powell doctrine, right? I think we're still operating on Powell doctrine.
Yeah, Colin Powell.
I'm curious to know if that will, will that doctrine change with the needs of a new cyber environment that we are, presumably going up against with Russia, Ukraine. We're seeing it in Syria. All aspects of kinetic warfare is changing dramatically, like almost like every day.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you're encouraged about with some of the new cabinet opportunities that have been named. Nobody's been seated, obviously.
Sure.
So a lot of this is just going to be, just two gentlemen having a conversation about opportunity.
Yeah.
But, I think it's important to kind of start framing what it's going to look like, because I think, with the promises made coming into this new administration, right? It's going to be one of less combat, but more national defense.
The National Security Administration and the Department of National Intelligence is going to change hands. There's a lot of people. There's people that are freaked out about Tulsi Gabbard being appointed to that. There's people that are very supportive of her. I've met her. I think she's a great person. Sure. She's a great human being. She's done a lot of philanthropy. She does a lot of good things for the veteran community. She, I don't think that she was ever really a Democrat. I think she's probably always been a Republican, but just, things change. I know that she's changed her opinions on some things. Like she wasn't super big into guns for a while. Changed her stance on that. So that'll be interesting. Again, like people can make their own decision on that. I know there's a lot of people that don't like her, a lot. Yeah. But she also has a pretty good support base as well. I've met her in person. She's very friendly, very nice. And she does a lot of work with Hunter 7 as well, too. Like they're good friends with her. So that'll be an interesting situation to see how that goes. A lot of people are saying she's like a Russian asset, but I don't know if that's just fabricated stuff or no. I think it's probably not necessarily accurate, but I don't know. I'm not in the intelligence community, so who knows? But
I can't trust the intelligence community anyway. After 51 of them signed onto a bogus document, so they lost all the credibility.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. Is a lot of people feel that way, and it's like, well, maybe change is good. Maybe change is good, and we'll see some different stuff coming from her. Another one that's interesting, I don't really know a lot about him, is Kash Patel. Yeah. As far as being the director of the FBI. Here's the thing about life in general, from my perspective, is that there's a lot of folks out there that are like, oh, the FBI is corrupt, all this, that, and the other thing. I guarantee you that there's gonna be bad people in every organization.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But there's also gonna be good people in every organization.
I mean, shit. I've met more of share of bad people in the Marine Corps than I've ever cared to.
Right. Like I guarantee there's going to be bad people in every single organization, but there's also going to be some good people, and you just have to find the right ones. And how do you vet them? I don't know. I'm not.
I think Kash, the Patel opportunity is rather interesting. You know, I interviewed him a couple of years ago.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was a fascinating interview.
Yeah.
And if anybody that wants to listen to it, you go on American Grit and find it.
That's cool. I didn't know you guys interviewed him.
Yeah, and he's a strange cat. He's got a very interesting background. He's very intelligent.
Yeah.
You know, and for a short period of time, he ran the CIA. I didn't know that. Right? And when he told me that, I was like, holy hell. Like,
yeah.
For like 5 minutes, he was, it's like the CIA breaker. But, you know, but with him comes an incredible amount of legal knowledge, right? And the intricacies of how the intelligence network works, and, you know, information collection methods. You know, if you ever have the opportunity to talk with him yourself, ask him how he earned his award that he was given by the CIA, right? He's a very astute and smart individual, and I believe the right individual to take on the role of the FBI director. And I'm going to tell you why. And what I'm excited about is, you know, there are portions of our government that have become so bloated and bureaucratic that they are now ineffective in their ability to do the original mission of what they were set out to do.
Yeah.
Right. And you can go down the list of what those things look like.
Sure.
And, you know, I don't want to because it'll be controversial.
Yeah.
But, you know, in my opinion, what I like that Patel had said is the first thing that he would do is he would shut down the 7th floor of the FBI and kick out all those officers that are, you know, doing desk jobs and put them on the street to where they need to be doing their job and what the original mission statement is to go out and find bad guys, right? Not sit in an office and do political, you know, bullshit and finding political enemies because, you know, I think, you know, and it goes through the long history of the FBI. They've been doing this for quite some time. You know, you can go back and read the stories of Hoover and, you know, all the nefarious things that he did spying on Americans, right? So they don't have a very colored history of doing good by the citizen other than, you know, maybe taking down the mob.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the problem is like, I'm sure the FBI has done a lot of good things, but people probably don't hear about them because they hear about the stuff that pisses people off the most.
Sure.
You know, like you're right, exactly. Like Ruby Rich.
You don't know, maybe get shoved in the face by an FBI SRS guy.
Yeah, that exactly. That puts a big stain on your record. Or like when, like you look at it like this, the Marine Corps, for example, like the snipers that peed on that corpse, right?
Yeah.
That was a big stain on our reputation for a long time. Haditha, big stain on our reputation for a long time. Even though the majority of the time the Marine Corps has been in existence, we've done unbelievably amazing things and like incredible feats of heroism. Like, you know, I would imagine the same thing goes for pretty much every organization. Yeah. And you're gonna, like, the bigger and bloated you get, like you said, especially when it comes to government, the more bureaucracy gets put in place. And like, how are you gonna, like, how do you have oversight?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I've listened to Cash's podcast on the Sean Ryan show, and I saw some of that. I haven't watched the whole thing. He does seem like a really smart guy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know much about him. I read a little bit about his bio because, like, you can go on to the like his .gov website about him. They've got a little bio, and I read that. Interesting cat. His dad seems very proud of him, though.
Yeah.
His dad seems like super, which is pretty cool. You know, that's cool. Your dad's like cheering. I think his dad's a doctor, I want to say.
Yeah.
And he's like cheering his son on. It's kind of cool to see.
I got some Patel merch.
Some Patel merch. Okay.
It's some
Patel merch.
Join or die. It's really great. It's really good.
That's awesome.
You know, and then, you know, I think, you know, another interesting individual, RFK, right? You know, coming in as the HHS. Like,
That's
holy hell.
cool.
Like that,
Kennedy.
right? A Kennedy coming back into government.
That's
right?
cool.
That's amazing. And, more importantly, a Kennedy is going to be in a position of health, right?
Yeah.
If you remember what JFK was, really big upon back in his time was the physical health of our generation of Americans, right?
Yeah.
He created the Presidential Fitness Awards. He was challenging schools all across America to raise the physical fitness of all of our population. And if you look at the footage of those times,
I remember.
God, man, those are some lean ass people.
Yeah, I've seen those videos, the black and white footage of when they had like the fitness PT programs instituted into high schools and middle schools and stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you build a foundation with it, maybe it's not going to get everybody to do it, but maybe you might like convince some people when they get out, like, hey, I should probably keep at this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what Kennedy identified back then, right, which was probably, the canary in the coal mine at that time was, the physical fitness of our population is a national security situation, right?
Yeah.
We've got 70% of our population that's under the age of 21 years old right now that is obese and not a fighting condition.
Yeah.
That's a problem for us.
It's a problem, man.
Right?
That's a real issue.
So like, and I think what was interesting, you talked a little bit about Reagan earlier. Reagan stood up this program. I don't know if you remember Arnold Schwarzenegger going around in the early 80s. I remember it clear as day. The presidential fitness test. Like if you performed at the top 10% in your school, you would get a certificate from Schwarzenegger and the president of the United States saying you did this, you achieved that, right? And if you look at Trump, I'm not going to be a Trump trumpet here, but what I think is interesting about what Trump is bringing to the table is he spent a lot of time. Not many people know this. That he spent a lot of time in Reagan's cabinet, right? And he was a very influential advisor to President Reagan, and Trump has a very tight connection to the Kennedy family. Right. So I think we're going to see with him taking in the second presidency is a lot of those old Camelot ideas coming back to the surface of like, that's the idea of what making America great again, getting us physically fit, getting us off of the shit food and all of the pharmaceuticals and really being focused on spirituality and our neighbors and, being contributors back to our country and making our country great rather than sitting on the couch, consuming endless brain rot and shoving shit down our mouth that's making us 300 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. Like I don't know. I know that RFK is going to do a lot of good things for health and for like, food and like the FDA and pharmaceutical drug companies and all that stuff. And they're gonna come after him, I'm sure. But
Sure.
at least now he's got the security for it.
I mean, that's a very important thing to say. Like you just saw a kid shoot the CEO of a fucking
the health insurance, United Healthcare,
right? This guy's, that whole story is just messed up in itself.
Yeah,
right?
wild.
But I think the danger is like if we're in a position now in this country today where you could turn on social media and you're going to see a wide group of people that think that assassination was right.
Yeah,
we need to do more of that.
Yeah,
right.
You're going to see people who say that and encourage that.
Yeah, and if you look at where we are as a society, right? Look at the response to Hurricane Helene. Look at the response to the homeless situation in L.A.
Yeah,
right. We are past the desensitized moments of fifth generation warfare, right? And we have now got into like the killing stages where it just doesn't like those things don't matter to us anymore.
Yeah.
And I say that very sparingly and sensitively, but at the same time, because I know what it means.
Sure.
That's a heavy thing to say about the society of our country. But when you look at, I don't know, the 2 assassination attempts that happened on the President-elect Trump this year and how they got swept under the rug like as no big deal.
Yeah, well, that's also part of the problem with the news cycle, because it's like 24-hour news cycle, and they're on to the next thing, and they're on to the next thing. Oh, this happened? Okay, it's good for about 24 hours. Is it still viral tomorrow? Nope, not anymore. And then they start finding something else. And that's a problem too. And part of that's just the way that the media works nowadays.
Yeah.
It's just like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? It sucks, because then things like Hurricane Helene gets swept under the rug and completely overtaken by everything else that's happening.
Right.
Nobody's talking about that right now.
Right.
Nobody's talking about that.
Everybody cares. You got Jay-Z.
Yeah, they care about celebrity stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't give a shit about some guy, using his or her clout to hurt other people.
Yeah.
Like let's just kill that.
Good. Charge it. Good. Charge him and sweep it under the rug. I don't care about that. I think or make an example of him or whatever. But if he is guilty for it, if he's actually guilty for it, then yes, hold him accountable, charge him, and then let the system take.
What I meant to say is kill that story, not kill that guy, but kill that story, because that story doesn't mean shit. Right?
No.
It's divisiveness that takes away from what's really going on. What we need to be focusing on.
But it's gonna get clicks. The same as that OnlyFans chick that slept with 100 dudes in one day, and then was like interviewed and filmed the whole thing and like has it all on camera.
Did you watch her?
I didn't watch the interview. It was too much. It's too much. I can't. It bothers me so much. Like even reading that headline, and so it's this little English girl, this British girl, and I'm just like, dude, that stuff is destroying. That stuff is destroying society. It's not good for men to overconsume pornographic material. Just not good for your brain, because it stunts the natural stuff, like the dopamine hits, the instant gratification. None of that's good, because then it makes you desensitized to when it actually happens, and you stop giving as much of a crap about that. And that's not good for your interpersonal relationships. It's definitely not good for the females that are doing it for money. Like, I don't think that the government should step in and be like, outlaw it, because I don't like the government telling people what they can and can't do.
Absolutely.
I do think it should be regarded as taboo again, and that's going to be a societal thing. But again, that's just another example of like, hey, this headline, this article pops. It's going to get mad clicks. Nobody cares about Hurricane Helene. They care about this because this is crazy and this is hot right now. Like, and then, in a week that'll be gone. People forget, and that's, I don't know if it's just the way that the news cycle is now or not. It kind of sucks that it is, but
we've always lived in if it bleeds, it follow the story, right?
Yeah.
That sort of journalism goes back, hundreds of years.
We all got ADD because we're on our phones all the time, so we're just like swiping. The next thing. What's the next TikTok?
I think the interesting thing that I ask now, right, is after the election this year, is does legacy media have the hold over the population like it used to? It doesn't appear so.
I hope not.
Right. I think what people are starting to do now is they've broken themselves away from that constant negative news shit that just gets pushed down on them, and are consuming content in different ways through people like you that are just giving it to them straight as they see it. No motive, no agenda. Just, hey, like, here's what's going on in the world. I'm going to give it to you straight.
Yeah. You can choose, but you make your own decision.
Exactly.
You're an adult. Be an informed citizen of the United States.
And then you get the legacy media that's just like losing their minds. But what do you expect from people when, like a person like me, right?
Yeah.
I'm an educated individual. I've gone to college. I got a degree, right? I run a big business.
Yeah.
Do you expect me, pick one, Hertz, right? You expect me to accept a story that comes out of Hertz or any of these big media, the big legacy media, that's quoting third-party anonymous individuals? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. That is not journalism, right? That is hearsay.
Yeah.
And that is all our media is doing these days because of what you were saying earlier, is that constant news cycle, the constant click, the desire for clicks and staying relevant. I think the people are starting to really recognize that as just bad behavior.
Yeah.
And they're moving away from that. in droves, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't be more happy about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people get their news from X now. I think X is like the top
God, it's so good.
news source on the planet right now. As
It
far as
reminds me
working.
of like Facebook 2014.
Yeah, like way back. Where
Very
it was
raw.
like, yeah, raw, completely raw. Yeah.
And you don't know what you're going to stumble into.
Yeah,
You might.
It's crazy. Like, I mean, one video could be like actual pornography. The next video could be somebody getting murdered, like in Syria, like with a fully automatic weapon. Like, and then the next one could be something about like flowers.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be anything.
Exactly.
You know, it's completely unfiltered, which is like, life is unfiltered.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You gotta sift through it all to find out what makes sense, and tell your own story, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge that, I think we're going to be going into over the next couple of years is like, as the legacy media continues to try to maintain its relevancy, right? And the platforms like X and others continue, and TikTok to continue to bring unfiltered raw information to people.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be harder for just the layman to be able to discern anything that's coming out of it's just considered information, right? And this really comes down to the importance of critical thinking and the ability to understand what you're reading and say, okay, this might have some sense of truth to it. I need to verify it 3 more times to really put it in a state of truth that I can start sharing it with others, right? But man, they've even in the college aspects, they have removed some of a lot of that research methodology for people to tell to do their own research, right? And to tell their own stories. So I'm not encouraged that it's going to be, and also, to be honest, like we're dealing with a population that has a median comprehension level of 8th grade.
Yeah, our education system needs some work. Need a little bit of work.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
In a lot of ways. I don't know how you fix that either, but maybe privatize it. I don't know.
I like the idea of trimming government. I think
I do too.
I'm a constitutionalist, and I think that most of these systems that are currently in the United States government right now are just stealing our money.
And I'm sure that there's lots of people that feel the same exact way.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there are fantastic and very smart people in those divisions of the government.
Sure,
but they can go get a private job like everybody else. Because what I've learned is that if you work for the government, it's probably because you can't work for yourself.
Wow, I know that there's
That's a bold statement.
That's a bold statement. Yeah, I think that there's definitely some bloat, and there's for sure a lot of positions that may not necessarily be needed to be there. And the reason I say is because the government doesn't have to run like a business where the business has to trim the fat in order to be successful.
Agreed.
Because the government can just tax more, they can continue to collect taxes, and they don't have any reason to become more efficient because they don't have an incentive to. So it naturally creates bloat and bureaucracy and all this other stuff because they're not at the mercy of their shareholders.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, government's natural tendency is to grow.
Yeah.
That's it. Like you look at any model.
Perpetuating thing.
Right. And the only thing that makes our situation different than any other place on the planet is that we have a document that restricts the government from doing certain things.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the beauty of America.
Yeah.
Right. Is that, even as bloated as the government is right now, they can't run roughshod on us as much as they would like to, or the government would like to.
Yeah.
Not the people, but the government
Yeah.
would like to. They can't because of certain things, right? All the amendments.
Yeah. There's the founding fathers were, extremely educated and brilliant guys for coming up with a lot of these things. And then obviously the folks that came up with the amendments as we went down the road in the future to.
Let me ask you this question. How old are you?
38.
38.
Yeah.
Let's roll time back. Put yourself in 31-year-old Kagan.
Yeah.
31-year-old Kagan, would you be in any state of mind to be in a position to write the Constitution of the United States?
No.
Right?
No. I don't, even now, I don't feel like it. Those guys could speak multiple languages.
Right?
They
is
literally could
250
speak like
years ago.
3, 4 languages, and they were in their early 20s.
Yeah.
They were brilliant dudes, man. Like,
Right.
brilliant.
Right.
I mean, and granted, the times were different. People owned slaves. There's a lot of different stuff going on back then. But that doesn't change the fact that they're like, we have to figure out a way to prevent this from turning into what we see over there on Great Britain right now.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That was the big thing.
You want to know a fun fact?
What's that?
Do you know the very first country on the planet to ban slavery?
To ban slavery?
Yeah.
Was it? It wasn't Greece, was it?
I believe, if I recall, and we have to fact check this one. But,
Yeah.
But I remember it being Vermont.
Vermont? Oh, the state. Oh, the first state.
There's the first country.
There's a country called Vermont?
Well, at the time it was a colony, right?
Oh,
But
okay.
it's the first independent government
Yeah.
in human history to ban slavery.
Vermont.
Vermont.
Huh.
It was like early mid 1700s.
Okay, so before the revolution. Yeah. It's possible. I don't know enough about. See, that's the thing. There's so much history, and some of it. Sometimes certain things come out later that changes what we've been learning for such a long time. So it's like I'd have to do some research. That'd be wild, though. That'd be wild for sure.
My mom. I grew up a bit of a nerd. My mom one of my very first birthday presents was the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Oh, jeez. Oh, the U.S. Constitution and the amendments is like not a bad present for a kid.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
Absolutely.
learn something about your country.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Be a contributor.
Yeah, exactly. Be with an informed citizen.
Yeah.
Because I think that was part of the reason why they set the government up the way that they wanted it to be, because it's like they wanted the American citizens to be informed so they could make informed decisions on who they're going to elect to all these positions. Of course, now, obviously, there's like 1,000 new positions in every state and local government all the way up.
Yeah.
And it's just like exponentially grown. Back then, it was very bare bones because they're like, we don't need all that stuff, you know?
Right.
We just need basic infrastructure and military.
And protect commerce.
And protect commerce. And that's it. Everyone else, figure it out.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we're not going to tell you what to do. We're also going to tell you what not to do. Just don't kill people, don't steal from people, and just don't break the law, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like the whole, when I look at like the Wild West, and like where we were kind of at, say post Civil War out in the West, people are settling out there. There's no laws. Like, figure it out.
Yeah,
like, obviously, the government's going to come arrest you if you get caught like killing a bunch of people or something. But like, figure it out. Go out there, build a house. Maybe figure out a way to like defend your community. Find a way to grow crops. All that stuff.
Imagine being the sheriff of the territory of Texas.
I mean, dude, that size. It's like
It takes
one
10 hours to drive it.
to drive it,
Right.
and you got horse and buggy.
Yeah, because I don't know if anybody else does this, but like if I'm driving from San Antonio to anywhere, like if I'm in a car for more than 4 hours, like I'll start thinking stupid shit. And like I think like how long would it have taken me 100 years ago?
Oh, dude.
To fucking ride a horse from San Antonio to Austin,
Uncomfortable too,
right?
Like,
hey,
you're
I'll tell my wife I'm gonna run up to Austin to grab some feed for the horses. I'll be back in 3 weeks.
Be back in 3 weeks. If I don't come back on the third week, that means I'm dead.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. Sell the farm, move back to New York.
It's like, bro, it's so crazy to think about. Like, cause like, how far is Austin from here?
It's about an hour 15. So call it 70 miles.
70 miles. Yeah, 70 miles by horse when you're just trotting along. You know, dude, that's gonna take a long time.
Right.
That's going to take and you got to stop every night, and you got to camp and make camp and hope you don't get killed by the fucking locals that are out there, and you got to cook for yourself. You got to bring food, maybe have some like salted food that you can feed yourself, have some feed for your horse to keep it alive too while you're making the journey. Like there's a lot of things you got to prep for.
Right. Right. And then you're not even thinking about, yeah, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to just take a drink from that stream. Next thing I got malaria.
Yeah, whatever, cholera or something, like whatever disease was back there. Like, yeah, you never know. Like, you can't just like keep a fire going throughout the night in the cold, because like there could be people out there that want to steal your horse.
Right. Right.
Like it's just nuts. It's crazy. But it also gives me such a huge level of respect for the people that were here before us, man.
Yeah. Those were.
Dude, I don't know how they must have been dragging their sacks in the dirt everywhere they went, because they were just so massive. You know what I mean? Like,
I remember like my grandfather, he had some of that old steel, that you know what I'm talking about. Like that old, like that, you just come from an old generation.
That
right?
grit.
Yeah. You're like, what the fuck is this? Some John Wayne shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and then I listened to, I heard stories about his growing up. He was born in 1912.
Yeah.
Growing up in Chicago in like slum housing where there's 8 families in one apartment. It's like, what the hell?
That's unreal. Like that's the thing about, like, especially the cities back then.
Yeah.
Life was very different in a city back then than it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chicago was, a really rough city back in the early 1900s. I mean, probably no different than New York or anything like that. But, you had a very culturally diverse, poor group of people.
I couldn't have done that. I'd rather grow up in the middle of nowhere than grow up in a city like that. Because it's like, middle of nowhere, it's like, if I don't see anybody, that's good. If I do see somebody, that means they're probably here to steal from me.
Right.
Right. Like, or you don't know. Maybe they're here to tell me something else. But it's like, you can kind of treat everybody as like you're a bad guy until you prove you're not a bad guy.
Right.
In the city, anybody could be a bad guy, and you're surrounded by them all the time, and you don't know.
Yeah.
Especially back then,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not, humans aren't meant to live like that. You know what I'm saying? They're meant to live out in the country with a little bit of land.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think about that shit all the time, man. Like, what would that been like? Like, coming across the Mississippi into the New World. Like,
dude,
what would that been like, man? Holy
wild. But I love that, because like that's like part of that, like, that American, the frontiership, like that Western expansionism, like the whole what's it called? Manifest destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, it is, I in a lot of ways, I feel like it was like a divine providence that this whole thing happened.
There's a lot of evidence of that, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, here's one. Like, was it Monroe? Was it Monroe and Madison died on the same day? 50 years after signing the Declaration of Independence.
50 years.
I think. No, was it Jefferson and Monroe died on Jefferson and Madison? Two of the founders.
I want to find out.
Died on the same day.
We're gonna.
And it was fascinating because one of them passed before the other, and he said on his deathbed to his son that, thank God. I think it was Jefferson. I think Madison died first. And he said, thank God Jefferson still lives, or something to that effect. Like, that's some divine.
Thomas Jefferson and John Adams.
Adams?
I think John Adams, they died on July 4th, 1826.
Yeah, 50 years after.
Jefferson was 83 years old. Adams died 5 hours after Jefferson.
That's crazy, right? The founders.
Yeah. And then James Madison died 10 years later
there you go.
On June 28th, 6 days before the 60th anniversary of the United States.
Man, that's some crazy divine stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
There's just coincidences, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams. Yeah, and then you had John Quincy Adams after that. That was that was his son, right? John Quincy, yeah. And he was a president too. Yeah.
But even all those stories, like you ever read any of the stories of George Washington? Like, that man should have died like 6 times.
Oh yeah,
right. But especially when he got left in the forest and he had to cross the river. Like, I personally probably would have died.
Ah, man, dude, the people back then were just built different.
Yeah,
they were built different. Especially like the original colonists, the people that lived here in like 1760. Like. What a weird time to be alive. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
muzzle loader rifles,
right.
engines.
You're a member of the what is it, the Virginia Trading Company, and you're going into the frontier.
Right. And I mean, there's like the Native Americans that were living out here, the tribes were like not super cool with us. I mean, some of them were, we traded with some of them, but some of them were like, no, I'm going to take your scalp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and that's crazy, you know?
It's wild stuff. Let's shift gears into some more topical
Sure.
kind of conversation right now. Right?
Yeah.
You talk a lot about current affairs, the situations with Russia, Syria, the conflict that's happening there, Ukraine.
Yeah.
I think I want to focus on Syria for a minute.
Sure.
There's some big news that is happening. We've got the collapse of the government, which is fascinating to me. Right, I was doing some research, getting prepared for this. Did you know that Damascus is the longest running human city in human history?
Damascus.
That has gone uninterrupted throughout human history. It's
There's been a city that's consistently been there. Yeah.
Right.
That's wild. Yeah. I always hear people talk about Damascus steel, right? Which did that originate there in Damascus? Is that where that process was invented? I don't know. I would imagine so, because I don't know any other Damascus anywhere, right?
Right.
Which, I mean, obviously like blade work and stuff like that back then, like maybe they were making swords instead of knives or something like that. I mean, that's such an old part of the world, part of the Ottoman Empire at one point, you know?
With Damascus falling, Syria's fallen, Assad is out, the Ba'ath Party, there's 60 years of reign is gone. What are some of the challenges you see of the area, right now? You got we still got Americans out there, to my understanding, working with the Turks. You got Turkey that really wants to finish a blood feud they've had with Syria that's been going on for millennia.
Turkey?
Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff. Turkey is the most complicated, not Turkey. Syria's the most complicated AO I've ever been in my life, or even seen people talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, there were literally, there's probably like over 20 different groups that are operating in Syria. Like the big one that everyone knows about is the HTS, right? The Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which formerly called the Nusra Front.
Yeah, Nusra.
An Al-Qaeda affiliate. They are designated as a terrorist organization by the United States State Department. The people that just took over Syria on the whole entire western half are designated a terrorist organization by the United States.
Right.
And then you've got the Syrian Free Army, or the Free Syrian Army, which we had like, an installation that we worked with certain of them.
Yeah.
Our main partner force over there being the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, and they can sit like there's so much complex stuff, because you've also got like the YPJ, the YPG, the PKK are not really in Syria as much as they are in Turkey.
Yeah, the Kurds.
And we don't work with the PKK, like we work with the SDF. Problem is that some folks that are in the SDF have friends or family that are in the PKK.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes a complicated history with PKK.
There's a lot of because like some of the PKK are Kurds, and so they automatically like, and also there's people in the SDF that have affiliations with, or are friends with, or have family with folks in the YPG, YPJ, and so we work with the SDF. We don't work with the other ones, but everybody, especially Turkey, is like, Turkey looks at us working with the SDF the same way they would if we were working with the YPJ, YPG, PKK. And they actually look at the SDF the same as they look at those other organizations, and they basically call them all terror organizations. So essentially Turkey and everybody else around there is saying that the United States is working with a terrorist organization. the SDF is not a terrorist organization. They're Kurds,
Yeah.
essentially. Like, and that's one of the things
Same
everybody,
people we were helping in Iraq.
dude. Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's like, dude, we need to be good to the Kurdish people. They deserve it.
Well, they're the last Coptic Christians in the entire area.
That's what I'm saying, man. We got to take care of the Kurds because they've taken good care of us. They've helped us a lot over the past 25 years.
Yeah.
They deserve every bit of our help, and we're doing a lot to help them out for sure. But there's like, obviously, if you look at a map, you look at Syria where the Euphrates River kind of cuts through it. Everything east of the Euphrates River is SDF territory and United States government. We've got installations over there and stuff. And everything west of the Euphrates is all now HTS, rebels, and these other affiliates. And I've already seen a lot of fighting over in Deir ez-Zor, which is like a city that's along the Euphrates River, very close to United States locations, very close to the Syrian Democratic Forces as well. And I've also heard that the HTS and the rebel forces that just toppled the regime have moved into Deir ez-Zor.
Yeah.
And this is not long after, because like what happened was the Iranian sponsored terror groups that were staying in Deir ez-Zor with the Assad regime forces, they all vacated and they left when the regime was toppling. And then the SDF moved in, kind of took this spot. And then the locals are not fans of the SDF, and they were throwing rocks at them. There was like clashes. And then the rebels moved in and took Deir ez-Zor out, and the SDF pulled back again. I also saw a statement on Al Jazeera, which this is going to be interesting. I made a video about it yesterday, actually, about a statement from the new Syrian Department of Political Affairs in Damascus. They said that we do not accept a divided Syria, and everyone must prepare themselves for the change that's occurred. That right there is like, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're not going to tolerate the western half of Syria being divided, or does that mean that you're not going to tolerate the entire country being divided? And like, what does that mean? What are you gonna do? You're gonna take over all the territory that the SDF controls and like boot the Americans out? Like, what? That says a lot. You know what I mean? Like, that's loaded.
It's a powder keg.
It's a powder keg.
Right? You got the IDF that's moving into Golan Heights. Right?
Oh yeah, to create that buffer zone, because they're like, we're not letting the HTS bring weapons into Lebanon,
right,
or to allow Iran to bring stuff into Lebanon anymore. We're done with that.
Right? You still, there's still factions of, dare say, they're probably not calling themselves ISIL anymore, but they're still trying to bring the Levant back, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think is the woefulness of this all is like, the American public has no idea of what the caliphate is what the caliphate is, right?
Yeah.
And what is trying to manufacture itself within that region is this.
It's bad.
The caliphate is trying to establish the Islamic religious government.
Yeah, dude. People don't understand. So when I explain it to them, when I explain like what the situation with ISIS is, think of it like the Lord of the Rings. Mordor, right? Mordor and like Sauron is like ISIS, right? And everybody united against ISIL and there's like Al-Qaeda affiliates, like the Russians, the Turks, like the Americans, the Iranians. Everybody equally hated ISIL because they were doing atrocious stuff,
right? Like
crucifying people in
cages, burning them alive,
doing unbelievably unspeakable barbaric stuff in the name of like religious fanaticism. There's still detention facilities all over the place that are holding thousands and thousands of ISIS members.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crazy. That's a whole deep rabbit hole, but they're still going to try to come back. They're probably going to try to take advantage of this like chaos to try to do something too. I guarantee.
Yeah. I don't see very good things for Syrian's future. Right?
I'm very concerned.
Yeah. And and with the vacate of Russia, under the cover, they pulled the Bagram.
Yeah, they bounced.
In the
They
middle
were
of the
like,
night.
I'm getting out of here. They bounced out of Tartus. They took all their ships. And then not long after, Israel's Air Force came in and bombed and destroyed the entire Syrian Navy.
Oh, Navy, the Air Force is gone.
Yeah.
Like there's no assets.
They're like, we're not letting you have any of this stuff. You can have your country. We're not going to come in there, but you're not going to have anything that can touch us.
Yeah. So where do you think, geopolitics, it's my favorite. But, so this does complicate things even further for, the situation that's happening in Israel, right? You got, they got destabilization happening in Lebanon. You've got Syria that has fallen. You still have Hezbollah and Hamas that are still operating to some degrees. And, the big giant that, is... I guess we're still waiting for their response, but Iran, like that is the wild card here, especially, well, let me rephrase that. With it being the wild card, do you think that they are as influential as they could have been had Russia not entangled itself in its current situation with Ukraine and now looking like they're tying themselves up with NATO?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, in my opinion, Russia has so much going on with Ukraine right now. They're like, we don't have time for this nonsense, and we're just going to leave. We don't have time for this. They're too busy. They're too busy with it. And honestly, Iran is, because everything that they were sending into Syria had to go through Iraq, all of it. Mm-hmm. So like Iran's trying to influence Iraq as much as they can, especially the parliament if they can. Because they know the benefit of like being buddy with Iraq, which is weird because there was an Iraq-Iran war at one point in I think the 80s or something like that, 70s, and people don't know how bloody that was, but that was like trench warfare.
Saddam thought that he was a god and that he was called to destroy Iran and to absorb the Persians into his kingdom.
Really?
Yes.
It's crazy.
He was mad.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's nuts. Yeah, that whole people don't understand like that Iran and Iraq used to hate each other, like absolutely hate each other. And now unfortunately, they've kind of become buddy, and I don't know how close they are now. I know that Iran's trying to exert as much influence on Iraq as they can because they want to use it as an asset, but I don't think that the Iraqi people necessarily have an interest in being really associated with what Iran's doing because they enjoy so many freedoms today, especially the Kurdistan region of Iraq, like Erbil, places like that. They're fairly westernized. They like having, nice dinners and things like that. But, as far as Syria is concerned, the HTS don't like Iran. They're not fans of Iran. They're not buddy with them. They want, that's why all the IRGC and all the Iranian sponsored groups left. Yeah. Or they defected to the HTS, or they're pretending to be part of the HTS. I don't know. There's a lot of people that are switching sides all over the place. It's super convoluted and hard to tell sometimes, but I do know that they do not like the HTS, and the rebel forces do not like Iran. They also don't like Russia. And I don't think that they like Turkey, but some people have been accusing them of being a Turkey-sponsored group. Yeah. I don't know anything about that, but
Erdogan, there's something off about that guy as well. I don't understand. He's got some axe to grind against the United States.
Yeah, he's trying. It's like the most unique NATO partner.
Yeah.
It's a very peculiar situation with them because they spy on us sometimes too, and we've caught them doing it multiple times. I don't know. That's a very complicated situation, but bottom line is I think that there's pockets of ISIL that's popping up that we've been doing bombing runs on, and then IRGC or the Iranian-sponsored terror groups are going to try to make their way in there through Iraq still, but I don't think that they're not going to be set up with an established spot like they did before, because the Assad regime was like buddy with the IRGC and all them, so they kind of let them have free reign. I don't think the HTS is the same way.
Yeah. With the current instability that's happening, we know we have assets on the ground. Tower 22, is the place, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But do you see the Americans, or at least the war planners, learning from pulling out of Bagram and keeping some sort of foothold in Iraq, even off paper, to hold a position? Well, because like that, if anything is going to spark, it's right there on that in the Anbar, right? It's
in the Anbar province, yeah. The Anbar. Dude, you're not wrong, man. Like, I mean, Al-Assad Air Base. It's right there. They got hit a lot last year.
Man, when I was in Iraq, man, we were finding fucking so much shit from the Syrians on the Iraqi side.
Yeah.
We were watching so much shit go across the border from Iraq, like them taking munitions and all sorts of weird shit.
Yeah,
from
all
Iraq.
sorts of weird stuff,
Like,
man. Yeah,
we found there were trucks that we were looking at, that had some, like the mobile facilities.
Okay.
Like, if you remember the hubbub around the mobile facilities,
Yeah.
like that was a big thing, and they were believed to have crossed over from the Anbar into Syria in the early parts of the war, 2004 specifically. That's fucking crazy shit, man. Where is all that stuff now? And what like we know the Ba'ath Party was colluding with the Iraqi government. Right?
Yeah.
So what did they take those munitions, and are they squirreled away somewhere in Syria?
Dude, I guarantee there's so much ammunition squirreled away in Syria, all over the place, and chemical weapons and all kinds of stuff. I mean, they found chemical weapon caches and like detonated it because it was like not stored in a safe condition where it was like able to deteriorate, and they were like, we need to prematurely destroy this or bury it and destroy it after we bury it or something like that. There's all kinds of stuff like that happening. And God, the place is just such a mess, man.
Yeah.
It's just such a mess. I mean, you look at like
It's our old, and here's the hard part of it.
Yeah.
We did it. Us and the British.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, because I just don't know enough about the history as far as like prior to 1945. Like, I don't know who was in charge of Syria.
This goes back to 1917, the restructuring after the Great War.
After World War I is when a lot of this stuff started happening. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I think that the Ottoman Empire was involved in World War I and fought with us. And at the time, we had a really good reputation.
Oh, yeah.
Because our reputation was very different then than it was now. It was like known for being just like the land of the free, like freedom.
Right. Don't get involved in much.
Yeah, don't get involved in much. Kind of isolationist. Very different. And the world was just a different place back then, of course, too. But all the countries in the Middle East actually held us in a very high regard at that time, and that time of
Oh yeah,
society.
we brought a Western civilization to them. Like, you could look back at pictures of a westernized Iran in the late 1970s.
People were going there to go snowboarding and skiing, man.
Yep, man. Today,
nuts.
You get thrown off a building if you're homosexual.
Yeah, yeah, legitimately.
Right?
That thing will happen out there for sure.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. But But nonetheless, it's where we are today, and and today doesn't seem to be getting any easier, right? We've got drones over New Jersey.
Yeah.
That is absolutely crazy to me, right? That we have several local, state, federal, and military agencies saying we don't know what the hell this is.
Yeah.
Now, somebody's lying.
Something's going on. I know. Did you see the hearing about aliens that was with Michael Schellenberger and those other guys?
I got to tell you, Kagan, I am a fucking nerd about this stuff.
Okay, so you did watch it.
I am a sci-fi.
What was her name? Nancy Mace was
Nancy Mace, yeah.
She was in charge of that.
She just got assaulted.
I saw last night. I made a video about that earlier today.
Yeah.
Actually, I was like, Jesus Christ. But I don't know what assaulted means, because one person was like, okay, the guy like was trying to shake her hand and like jerked her wrist, and then I don't know if there was something else involved, and then some people were trying to downplay it, and some people were not trying to downplay. There's just a lot of polarization.
Yeah.
Bottom line is it's on Reuters, literally. It's like on the mainstream media. She got assaulted. She posted about it on X at the White House, or not the White House, sorry, the Capitol building.
Yeah.
And then the Capitol Police arrested the dude.
Right.
And then took him off. But anyway, so the hearing, I watched that entire hour and a half, whatever it was.
This was not as good as I thought it was going to be. I thought the first one, when Gerslach came out, I thought that was far more informative.
Yeah.
This was more of like pomp, it seemed
Well,
like.
the thing is that one guy could. So you know how you got the former admiral, and then you had the guy in the center. There's like 4 people.
Yeah.
Right. The guy in the far left, who was like the prior admiral, and then the next guy who had access to all these special programs.
Yep.
And he's like, I can answer that in a closed door.
Yeah. Oh, that's Steve. That's Steve Gerlach, yeah.
That dude knows so much.
Oh, he's the IG.
He knows all of it. I look at him, I'm like, I know he knows, but he can't say it on television because he signed all these NDAs.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I know when the thing is, I did notice when he was being asked questions is like, if he genuinely didn't know, he would just say no.
Yeah.
If he did know the answer, he'd say, I can't answer that in an open setting. So the answer is yes, then basically is what that means. Because he can say, I can't open that. So one can infer,
Yeah.
That it's
And he's very astute, right, to the way of navigating around the restrictions of classifications.
He was doing a good job dancing around.
Man.
I was like, damn.
Watch him on some of the podcasts, right? He's like, I can't talk about that in particular because of the collection methods that happen with this, but here's what I do know. And he'll give you an answer without
violating
the collection method.
Bro,
it's very well done.
I can't. It's too stressful for me. I can't do it. I can't talk about it. Like, dude.
Well, I mean, you got a lot of. But here we are. Like, we are now in a moment where we have disclosure potentially on the horizon, right?
Yeah.
We have government agents and whistleblowers, as long as my arm, saying that they have seen biological non-human entities. They have seen these crafts. They've seen this. They've seen that. Dude, you got Bob Lazar saying that I created element 115.
Yeah. What, dude? Like the talking about like, we detected this thing. This nuclear sub detected this thing that was moving. They thought it was a torpedo, and then it stopped and then went off in a different direction, underwater.
Right.
It's like what does that even mean?
It breaks all logic.
What are you talking about? What does that even mean? Dude, this stuff, I love this stuff too, because I'm just like, I want to believe that they're there and they're watching us, and they're just like, we're just trying to keep you from blowing yourselves up. Really, is what it comes down to. That's my hope. But
well, I mean, there's a lot going on around it, right? There's some belief that this was one of the reasons why Kennedy was assassinated, right? Is that he wanted to open the UFO file and share it with the Russians, because a lot of the UAP experiences that were happening then, they didn't want the Russians to think it was American technology.
Dude, when that guy confirmed that, he's like, yes, we do have a lot of technology that's derived from it, and so do a lot of our adversaries.
Right?
Oh, like what?
And then you listen. Like the 3 weeks ago, we watched Russia drop a developmental weapon that we still don't know what the fuck it was.
Oh, the IRBM? yeah. That was dropped on November 21st in the Donetsk Oblast,
right,
in Ukraine. Yeah, because it was like, what was it? They called it an IRBM because it was like
it wasn't intercontinental, it was regional.
Yeah, something. Yeah, but anyway, like it shot all these little things that came down. It looked so weird. It looked like
little cones.
Like little cones. Yeah.
So
it was an armed nuclear or something.
So I like to research, right?
Yeah.
And it looks like that was a weapon to any, just casual researcher that doesn't know anything, right?
Yeah.
The only thing you can make a comparison to is the potential black skunkwork project of the rods of God that the Americans, we supposedly had.
Yeah.
These kinetic tungsten,
the
pieces.
Rods of God, bro. That just sounds insane. This is the problem. Is like humans make these things that we could literally destroy our entire species and everything on the planet. And that's why I'm so glad Elon's so involved with this stuff, because we need to find a way off this planet so we can like ensure our species survival.
Yeah. There's, I don't know, man. So you got these UAPs flying over, Boykin, New Jersey, and
Yeah.
it's like, but these like Bedminster, there's a lot of military facilities up there.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
what was
nuclear
it?
storage facilities up there.
There's a bunch of Langley. I think some flew over Langley,
14
Norfolk.
days or something like that over Langley.
Yeah, Norfolk, Virginia too, which is like one of the biggest naval bases we have. Like,
right. So how do we as a government allow UAPs to fly undeterred over our airspace? Not discounting, the balloon incident.
Sure, yeah. The balloon, I remember that, the weather balloon stuff.
Right.
And that's not to be confused with the South Korea balloon incident, because they were floating poop and trash and stuff over into South Korea. You remember that? Yeah, totally. This is the Chinese weather balloons that they thought were like mapping our whole terrain and stuff. Yeah,
just conveniently hanging over
just
Minuteman sites.
Just conveniently going to North Dakota for some reason. Yeah.
It is madness. And now, before we started this podcast, there was breaking news that the government believes that these drones are coming from a mothership out in the ocean off of the coast of New Jersey, and that's controlled by Iran.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily buy that. But.
Well, I know a $1 trillion defense budget is really itching to get spent.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I do remember specifically was like, because people are like, why are we seeing more of these things?
Yeah.
And it's like, we're seeing them a lot more around these defense installations because the detection equipment that is set up in those locations is a lot more, I would say, definitive than your average small town.
Sure.
And so they have the capability of detecting these things much better than Tuscaloosa or, whatever, Kansas City.
Yeah.
Because they have all these things set up to make sure that they're preventing people from spying or whatever, you know what I mean? Especially at the sites that have like, secret no foreign passes are the only thing you can get on the base with or whatever it is, it's obviously like they're talking about in that brief, they're like, we have ships or we have things dating back to like the early 1900s, so we've known for a very long time, haven't told anybody, didn't want people to freak out. Now people are like, oh, we have aliens, but nobody seems to care.
Right.
Because there's so much the 24-hour news cycle. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to care until like we see an actual alien.
Like a guy comes out like, hey, I'm Bob.
Hey, I'm from Venus.
I'm from the Palladian.
I'm from a galaxy
18
over.
billion miles away.
Like,
just here for a Sunday.
Yeah. I just was here to stop you guys from blowing yourselves up. That's all. Yeah.
Now, and that's peculiar, right? Because, we're being told these are all drones.
Yeah.
And, and it probably is true to some reasonable degree.
Sure.
But there's a lot of weird things going on with that. But what's hard to believe about it is like, okay, if it was an isolated incident, sure. You could probably sell that to me.
Yeah.
But, how do you talk about like the Phoenix situation where the Phoenix lights, right?
Yeah.
It happened in 1997, right? Mm. How do you explain the 1952 orbs over the White House?
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
How do you explain those things?
How do you explain the Commander David Fravor incident off of the coast when they were flying their training missions?
Right.
You saw that the Tic Tac thing in the sky, like.
There was a video of a pilot in Manchester. This would really clued me in. I was the day after I saw it. I came running into the office. I'm like, guys, aliens, right?
Yeah.
But it was the drone that showed up in what Manchester, England. Have you seen that one?
No.
So it was this blue circular or ball like sphere that came down from the atmosphere and was on a tarmac. The number 2 of the plane was filming this thing as it's gliding across the tarmac. They shut the airport down until this thing left.
Oh my God.
Yes. It is ominous.
That is unreal.
ominous.
That is ominous.
You're looking at this thing like, okay, what is it? Is this man-made? Because if it's not man-made, or if it is man-made, who the fuck is doing it?
Yeah, who owns this thing?
Right? And we should probably, put an expedition together.
Yeah.
Or
We should probably put a task force together. Yeah, exactly.
Right? And if it's off-world, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah. Are they, adversarial, or are they just like checking us out to see what we're doing? Like, what does that mean?
But, if you would have had this conversation 5 years ago, you would have been a quack.
Yeah. We would have been laughing at you.
Right. But now you got all senior levels of government talking about this. You got, situations happening over at Skinwalker Ranch. If you don't know about that one,
I heard about
crazy.
Skinwalker Ranch. I was like, Ray, you really need to hurry up on that one. That was
so what an amazing time to be alive.
Yeah, it is an amazing. I mean, I guess every time people probably feel that way. No matter what time period you're from, it's probably like, wow, what an amazing time to be alive. But yeah, for sure right now, because just the amount of information and stuff that's coming out and just things that are happening, it's like, because think about it like this. Everybody thought the world was going to end when the Cold War was happening. They were my mom used to tell me stories that they were certain Reagan was going to press that red button. They were certain of it. And they were just like, this is the craziest time to be alive. And like now we're like, people are concerned that World War III happening and all this other stuff. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, because I don't think that the Russians want to obliterate the entire human race any more than we do. I just think there's a lot of tension, and everybody needs to just chill out, calm down, but you got, I think religious fanaticism is a problem. And a lot of those folks are driven and culturally driven differently than we are here in America. We're able to kind of take a step back. A lot of Western nations like Russia, even, who are oftentimes very Christian, are able to take a step back and be like, okay, we got to pump the brakes. But, when you got people that are like, on the jihad juice, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Did you know they found a what's it called? Catagon or Captagon. I think it's called Captagon. It's basically like PCP, but Middle Eastern PCP.
Oh,
and they had a factory that they found in Syria, abandoned, that they were producing Captagon for all of these troops.
Oh, I believe it.
And they were just, I'm telling you, like, millions and millions of pills and all this other stuff that they were just making for their troops, so that way they'd be like on PCP and like fearless and stuff.
There was I can't remember the name of it, but when we were operating in the Triangle, we were picking up a lot of fighters that were they had a vial on them. I can't remember what the drug was.
It was like opium or something.
It was something. It was some sort of psychoactive like that would put them into a euphoric state. So when they went out to do their jihad or the fighting, that their inhibitions would not keep them from doing what they needed to do.
Okay,
right. But it was a very, very popular. And
ketamine?
No,
PCP.
It was nothing I've ever heard of
ever
before, right? It was something that was being passed around the Arabs, specifically, and I say quote the Arabs, right? Because at that time period, what we were learning was that the Arab, what the Iraqi called the Arab, was a man without a home, right? And those were
interesting.
Mostly the people that we were fighting were not the Iraqis. We were fighting the Syrians, the Egyptians, the Palestinians that are coming over.
So crazy. But that's another thing that's interesting is like most of the Kurds are not Arabs. Everybody that's east of the Euphrates, and most everybody that's southwest of the Euphrates is Arab in Syria. So very different cultures.
Yeah. It's fascinating. But they were on this medicine, man, and we would pick them up and they would be geeked out of their mind.
That's why we changed the failure to stop drill from 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, to 2 to the pelvis, 1 to the chest, or 2 to the chest, 1 to the pelvis. Because it used to be like the drill used to be, okay, you always shoot 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. Well, you can do 2 to the chest, 1 to the pelvis, and that's good enough to stop a dude, and it's a much bigger target because like if you shoot somebody in the pelvis, they're even if they're on those drugs, they're not going to be able to stand up or walk because mechanically they're
blow
just
your hip
not going to be able to, you know. But that's a very common story I heard from a lot of people that they were on that stuff, even if they weren't planning on using a vest.
Lanacane? Is that what is it?
Lanacane?
Lanacane? Some
Might be
shit like that.
end with cane or something.
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a long time. 20
Still,
years.
yeah, 20 years is a long time. Yeah, but still, yeah, this is a very common thing. But they found a manufacturing facility that I think the Assad regime was using, and they were giving it out to all their soldiers, which I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're going to do with it, but the rebels were the ones that found it, so they're probably going to give it to their people. I guarantee you.
Right.
Guarantee you.
Lidocaine. There you go. That's what it is.
Okay, lidocaine.
Yeah, it's a little small vial, and they've just
pound it.
fucking gone, man. And
Dude.
they're just
Lost the nerve signals.
Makes sense.
yeah. It was a fascinating drug.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Crazy.
So it's a hot box over there, man. And now we've got the Iranians. What would you? How do I want to phrase this? If that turns out to be true, that this mothership of Iranian origin is off the coast of the United States in international waters, flying drones into the United States mainland, why the shit are we not putting that at the bottom of the ocean? Like, what is wrong with our posture these days?
Yeah,
This has been going on for over like almost a month now.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where this thing's located. I haven't seen any news about it.
Yeah.
I also haven't been looking though. So I've been so saturated with Syria for the past, like 14 days, and then before that it was like hurricane, and that was soaking up.
Yeah, there's no breaks. Man.
I had no breaks. It's just like constant something. So I've been so saturated with all this stuff. Plus I was traveling a lot. I'm going to miss things. There's no way I can not miss things. I mean, there's stuff going on in Africa. There's crazy stuff happening in Africa right now. Well, it's just falling apart, dude. ISIS is doing huge attacks in Iraq. Stuff is happening in Somalia. Like, it's just so much information. And that's part of the reason why it's important to take a step back and take a break.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because like, yeah, you got
this shit will consume you.
Yeah, it will consume you, especially when it comes to like open source intelligence reporting.
Oh man, yeah, forget about it.
Yeah, dude, you get sucked down a wormhole. I have a buddy who runs like one of those types of pages. Every now and then he'll just deactivate it and just go ghost for like a week and just take a mental health week.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Like when you're doing all the stuff with the Glen Sound Foundation, man. Like, I have to break away from that for a while because it gets so overwhelming. All the things that we
the stories and stuff.
Right? So it's like, you got to take a moment for yourself.
You have to.
That is absolutely important.
If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people.
That's right. It's like the mask on the airplane, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, brother, I feel like we covered a lot.
Yep.
We've talked about a lot of different things.
We did too, yeah.
Is anything you want to share that with the listeners that we haven't talked about?
Just on the topic of like mental health, like we were talking about before. Me personally, the things that helped me the most with that, just in case you were interested out there, the things that helped me the most is going to the gym, working out until I'm sweating. I have to be sweating. If I didn't start sweating, I wasn't working out hard enough. Sauna. I can't stress this enough. The sauna is one of the greatest. I'm going after this. I'm going to the gym right after this, and I'm going to go to the sauna afterwards. But the sauna, 20 minutes a day at 185 degrees. You will get out of that, especially if you work out too in conjunction, and you can't think about anything else while you're in there. You just can't. Not physically capable.
Yeah, it's hard.
You're just like trying to hang on, and then I'm saying, and then you get out, and you're like, oh yeah, okay. And then getting your diet right, getting some good food, cooking some home cooked meals, like not eating a bunch of processed crap, like having
get that gut health right.
Yeah, get your gut health right. Super important. Having a good relationship with your friends. If you can't have a relationship with your family because of circumstances, I get it. Occasionally it happens. Not everybody comes from the same cut of cloth, right? But try to have a good relationship with other human beings somehow, whether it's friends, family, relatives, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever. and then get involved in your community in some way, even if it's only one day a week where you're just like, okay, I can count on, I'm going to have some exposure to other human beings during this day. And just take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. Do these things seem like they're very easy to remember, but life gets busy. You got to go to work. You got to pay your bills. You got to drive. You got to commute. You got to do this, that, and the other. You got to take care of your family. If you don't do these things, all that other stuff's going to fall apart. You have to do these things. You have to go to the gym. You have to eat healthy. You have to do these things. And if you want to, if you like to meditate. If you want to pray and you want to go to church, go to church. That's good too, sure. But you got to you have to get into a good routine.
Yeah, discipline.
You have to have discipline. I get up every morning at 4:30. I wake up at 4:30. I shave. I go have breakfast. I go upstairs. I make videos for about an hour and a half. Then I go to work, and then I usually go to the gym, and then I'll work the rest of the day after the gym, and then I leave and I go straight to the sauna, and then I come home, and then I work some more. But it's like a very methodical thing, because I have to stop and take time to take care of my brain.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for anybody listening, that was just a master class in organization, right? Of just like most people will ask an entrepreneur or somebody that is, successful, like, how do you do it? Well, it's at the end of the day, it's the most simplest of things. It's being regimented and disciplined in your actions.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can achieve that most basic of thing, right, then you can achieve anything.
Yeah.
Right. Because, the hardest thing to do of any part of your day is making your bed.
Yeah.
Right?
Or getting up when your alarm goes off. God damn, that's
putting your feet on the floor and you're going, right?
Yeah.
But once you take that first step, like, now you're committed to the rest of the day, and you have to be disciplined in your actions. And if you're disciplined in your actions and your regiment of how you approach the things in front of you on a daily basis, with discipline and scalability, purpose, right? Those are the keys.
Yeah.
Like, I look back at like my success, right? My success, I've not done anything to get where I'm at today other than being disciplined in my actions.
Yeah.
Right? Saying that I will demand of myself that I will do X, Y, and Z every day until I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And it sucks. There are days that I don't want to do it.
Yeah, bro.
Right?
I feel that.
Real bad. And there's places that I have to go that I don't want to be at, but I have to be there, and I have to be the best Tim at that moment.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just showing up. Right.
Yeah. That's half of it too. Just showing up sometimes. Yeah. Even when you don't want to.
That's right. That's right. Well, Kagan, I think you're an incredible asset to our community and the things that you're doing, both active duty and within the veteran community itself. You bring a lot of laughs, of great information to the people that you that follow you, and I hope to see more of the great work that you're doing within the community, and continue to activate more people and get more people involved in the things that are important. So
appreciate that.
Hats off to you, and we appreciate you and being part of the Grud Style family, and just doing great things, man. So
appreciate that, Tim.
Until next time, my friends, this has been Tim Jensen, Kagan Dunlap, and it's been American Grit. So you know the drill. Be kind to one another and wash those stinking hands. Disease X is coming.
Disease XYZ is coming.
All right. We'll see you next time, guys.
Appreciate it, man.